Now let's go into the game and actually break that lap down so we can take a look at it in a little more detail. I typically use the in-cockpit camera when I'm racing, but when viewing the replays, it's actually good to use third-party camera here so that you get a better sense of where you can verify where you're placing the car on the road, whether or not there's any more road you can use when you're looking at your own replays, and then bringing up the telemetry as well. So going into first corner, unfortunately, I find I can't stay in third, otherwise I might bounce off the red limiter. So really just shifting into fourth, right before the braking zone here, which is that somewhere between this metal gate on the right-hand side and the 100-meter brake marker. And what's really key with this car is you want to trail brake, turn and brake as much as you can, especially with this first corner here. It kind of tightens up on the way out, so you want to brake all the way as you're turning into the apex. Still on the brake here. Okay, that's still on the brake, turning in, and now we're kind of just easing off the brake, and then being patient on the throttle here. So just, you never want to go full throttle right away on this car. Kind of always want to ease in on the throttle. And you can see I'm just getting away with a clean lap here. That's really using all of the road. And staying on the curb here so that I'm maximizing my angle of entry for the next turn. And just easing off the throttle a little bit. I typically use the end of the start of the white line on the right here as my marker to start turning in, starting to rotate the car and off the throttle so that I can get the rotation I need. I'm a little wide on that. I missed the apex in the corner, but it's not too big of a deal. The important corner is this one. You want to set up for this one. And when I'm in the car, I'm looking for the runoff, the blue strips on the runoff area when they end at the grass. Essentially, when I'm passing that point, I don't want to be turning into the corner. And again, lifting off the throttle to get that rotation I need. And then getting back on the throttle as soon as the car is tucked in and the nose is pointing where I want it to. Up through here, it's really important to carry as much speed and be aggressive on the first apex of this chicane. From the inside of the car, it actually looks like I'm already at the 100-foot marker. From the outside of the car, it looks like I'm braking just a little bit before it. But somewhere around this 100-meter marker is brake marker is where you want to start braking. Brake really hard. And while you're still on the brakes, start turning towards the apex here. It's really important to be aggressive on this apex so that you set yourself up for the next right-hander. And I could have clipped a little more there as well. So there was a little bit more room to go. But carry good speed through here. A little bit of light touch to the brakes. Shift down to first. And quickly into second before the next hairpin here. Now, you'll want to note that, you'll note as I'm coming out of this corner and picking up the throttle that I'm really just feathering it. I stay at 50% to, kind of at 50% for a while before I get the car fully straight. And you really don't want to go aggressive on the throttle with this car until you're going in a straight line. So quickly up in the second, this line here is where essentially for me, I need to come off the throttle and start braking, slowing down for the hairpin. Again, back down to first in the hairpin. Get a good run on the curb through the apex, but then start applying the throttle as you're off the curb. You don't want to do it on the curb. That tends to put a lot of wheel spin. But again, gently on the throttle. So it takes me a while to get back up to 100%. And I'm still, you see, I had to get out of the throttle there because I was too aggressive. I tried to go to 100% throttle as the car was coming out of the turn, and I had to back out so that I didn't lose the rear end. Down the straightaway, one thing I'll note with this car, it's fairly important to use manual with clutch, if you can. That actually gains you quite a bit of speed on the straightaway. So I tried racing with just manual without with the auto clutch, and I couldn't brake into the 218, so I was about probably 5/6 slower a lap. And it really shows on the straightaway as well. So if I'm using manual with the auto clutch, I can just see the my competitors take off on this back straight. And again, as close to the rev limiter as you can before you shift in the fifth, and then you're looking for the 150 meter brake marker here. From outside the car, it looks like you're braking just as you get to it. From inside the car, you look like you're already a bit beyond the brake marker. So just a fraction of a second after the brake marker, brake hard. And again, it's important to turn in as you're on the brakes, as you're easing off the brakes. That really helps the nose of this car turn into the corner. And a burst of, so after I get turned into the corner, I'm pointing in a straight line. There's a quick burst of max throttle, and then I'm kind of using the transition between corners to shift between first and second because I'm not on the gas anyway, and I can't really get on the throttle again until after the crest here. There's a little crest over the second part of that chicane, and your car will will lift off a little bit, get unsettled, and settle back down, and that's really when you can get back on the gas. So you can actually use quite a bit of the inside runoff area here without getting a penalty or without doing your lap. It's a good idea to stay close to that for the first part of this straightaway. And then you're looking for the 150 meter brake marker here as well to start your braking. And it's actually going to be somewhere between the 150 and the 100. Yeah, so from outside the car it looks like just beyond the 150. From inside the car it looks like you're probably halfway between 150 and 100 meters. By this point you're in fourth. When you're entering the turn you want to be in first. And the reason why I'm so aggressively downshifting with this car is that if you're in lower gears, that compression brake effect on the rear wheels really helps the car bite, the front end of the car bite. So if I were to take this in second, the car would kind of wash out wider, and I'd have to take it at a slower speed. So being in a lower gear really helps the car bite, turn in. But the thing you need to be careful of is being smooth when you're applying the gas. We're getting back on the throttle. So after the apex here, straighten out, quick squirt of gas, don't really have a lot of time. And again, I'm using, when I lift off here, I'm using that time to shift into seconds so that I don't have to shift when I need to when I'm on the power. Now, there's a little bit of a off-camber turn here through this apex, so your car will get unsettled. You want to make sure that you feel it settle back into the road before you start putting the power down. And again, be very gentle on the power here. And you want to be careful. You want to be sure that you want to be careful not to take too much of this curb into the next corner. If your car is too far to the right, that little raised edge of the curb on the right will really make it hard for you to turn left. It'll kind of pull the car towards the right, and you won't be able to get the car turned in for the next corner. So this corner coming up is really important because it leads onto a pretty high speed section. So if you get it right, you can gain a lot of time. If you don't, you lose a lot of momentum through those corners. The light post on the right is generally my brake indicator. So as soon as this AstroTurf ends and that light post on the right, what I'm doing here though is I'm trying to brake as deep into the corner as I can. This is, again, there's a little bit of a crest over this corner and it's an off camber as you exit. So you want to maximize your entry speed, but slow down as much as you can for the apex. And I've gone a little too deep in here. I've missed the apex. Hitting the apex here really gains you a lot of time. And what I mean by the apex is maybe like a full car width to the left, right? You want to be over that orange raised curb. So I run a little wide here, and I get too much of the curb on the exit. Just get away with a clean lap. But I'm not able to get on the throttle cleanly, so that cost me a lot of time this lap. Flat out through here, and this little banner up top is actually a really good marker. I wouldn't call it a brake marker, but really good marker to get off the throttle for the next right kink. So I use it as the opportunity to shift into fourth, and not that I need to go any faster. I just feel the car is a little more stable, a little less twitchy in fourth, but I'm not really on the throttle anymore. Right, so I use this as the point where I shift into fourth and really just ease off the throttle. Maybe a little bit of throttle in fourth, but for the most part off the throttle, so that I can get tucked in for this next series of right, left. And it's pretty much as soon as you're straight. You're carrying so much speed into here, and that's such a slow corner that as soon as you're straight, you want to be on the brakes. And it's better to brake a little earlier so that you can hit the apex here rather than run wide, because that'll cost you a lot of time. The light post here next to the yachts is what I use for the indicator for my next turn-in point for my next corner. You really only need to feather the brakes here, a little bit of brake input so that you get the front of the car to bite, and then kind of just feathering the throttle all the way through the corner so that you don't there's never enough grip here for you to actually be more aggressive on the throttle. I've never managed to take any more than take maximum throttle here until I'm pretty much on the curbing on the outside. And there's not a whole lot of time at maximum throttle as well, because as you get into the shade of this sky bridge here, you really need to start slowing down for the next corner. And this is an important corner to get right as well. If you're tight on the apex for this corner, you can really carry a lot more speed through here. And again, applying as little steering input as I can through there so that I can get on the power sooner. And then final couple of corners in the lap. As you're coming down here, aim for that 50-meter brake marker and use the start of the curbs as your braking point. You kind of want to almost be running right at it and then trying to brake and turn away so you don't hit it. And that'll kind of set you up for hitting the apex here. Getting back on the power. And you'll notice I've seen some of the leaders shift into third here. I tend to just stay in second because although I might run into the rev limiter, there's really not enough time for me to do much in third. And then this line here, this pit entry line, it's a good place to start braking. You don't want to turn in too early for this. This is a corner that tightens up on exit, so I'm trying to stay as straight as possible while staying on the track. You'll notice I'm going as deep as I can into this corner, hitting that outside curb again before I turn back in. It'll allow me to straighten up much more on quickly on the exit and get on the power. And that's my lap. That was a 2:18.5, I think. But again, still tons of time left. Just being smoother and tighter on the apexes. This is a pretty challenging car this month, and you can really see the skill gap between the top players on the leaderboards. I think this month we have almost a 4-second gap between us and the leader and the record setters. Most of it comes down to that tight hairpin section, and again, some of them are using the handbrake technique in the middle of that turn to get their car rotated. Feel free to give that a try. I've not had too much success with that.